Okay.
Welcome to tonight's October 19th, I think it is, or 18th, October 18th
No,
Torah
19.
study and chat with
19.
the rabbi. And we're thrilled to have Rabbi Barry tonight talking about Vayera, the Torah Parsha about Abraham in the book of Genesis. So take it away, Rabbi.
Well, thank you very much. Tonight, this week, we do read about Abraham, and there's a couple of different passages. One is Lech Lecha, and the other one is called Vayera. And thought we could talk about both of them. Lech Lecha, it's a very interesting passage because it really establishes the relationship according to the Torah between God and the Jewish people. And then Vayera also kind of fleshes out what is entailed in this covenant or this relationship. I'm not going to be able to stay on too long, so this will be a rather quick version, maybe till about 7:30. And I noticed we don't have any other rabbis or ministers, so that's okay, but I appreciate everybody being here with us. The really important part of this Torah passage, Lech Lecha, is where God says to Abraham, through you, I will bless all the nations on earth. You shall be a blessing, and I'm going to establish my covenant with you and with your descendants. We're going to be talking about this concept tomorrow night, the chosen people concept. In its benign form, it's a very good thing. The Jewish people believe that they've been chosen to be a light to the nations, not chosen to be better, but to serve humanity. It's a very wonderful concept as originally conceived. However, later on in the story, the descendants of Abraham then take it upon themselves to figure that because they were chosen, that means that they can wipe out other peoples that are not chosen, who are in the way to the promised land. So this passage starts out with Abraham being chosen for a blessing, and his nephew Lot is taken hostage, which we see now, unfortunately, in Haiti by 5 kings, and he goes in and he rescues Lot. It's very difficult to fathom how he could do that. He was supposedly a shepherd, and it doesn't explain quite how he was able to amass an army and weapons and soldiers to go against 5 kings and to pull off this rescue mission. And nor does it explain how he gets all these people and all this wealth. It does describe somewhat where the wealth comes from, which is a rather unsavory story. Abraham says to his wife, Sarah, at this time their names hadn't changed yet, it was Abram and Sarai, says to her, you're very beautiful, and I don't want, when we go into Egypt, because it was a famine, for people to kill me so they can marry you. So let's just tell everybody you're my sister, and that way my life will be spared, which they do. Then what happens is he's taken by one of the local rulers, or she is taken by one of the local rulers to be part of his, well, it doesn't say this, but part of his harem. And in return, Abraham is given all types of gold and silver and cattle and everything. He's made very wealthy. And then afterwards, he discovers that he had been misled. And he says to Abram, why'd you do this? I could have done something immoral. You should have told me the truth. So he goes, my bad, I'm sorry. Meanwhile, the king just lets him keep all this stuff, and he just goes off his merry way. Now he's extremely wealthy. They needed somehow to explain where he got all his wealth from, so this story was as good as any. Curiously, Isaac does the same thing. He tells the king of the Philistines the same story, that his wife is really his sister, and the same thing happens where she finds his fancy and he takes her for his own, And then later on, he discovers it wasn't really his sister, but his wife. And then he also gets upset. Many of the wells that were dug by Abraham were also dug by Isaac. The same story is repeated again. So it looks like for some reason they wanted to have 3 patriarchs, so they just kind of doubled up Abraham and told many of the same stories about Isaac. However, the takeaway of this Torah passage, if we want to derive meaning from it, is something that is very accurate and true. The Jews have been a Am Segulah, chosen people, a special people, a people that has helped the world to find righteousness and morality. And this part is very accurate. I believe not because we were chosen, but we chose to be that type of people. We chose to try to do the best we could to bring morality and enlightenment to the world. This is the purpose of the Jewish people. And this really is the lesson of Lech Lecha and Vayera. As I've also explained in the Torah readings in the Shabbat service, the epitome of morality is when Abraham argues with God and says that God shouldn't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah if he can find some innocent people, and negotiates with them all the way down to 10. If he can find 10 people, the cities will be spared. Unfortunately, he couldn't find the 10 and they were destroyed. But the lesson is that to be Jewish, you challenge authority and you seek justice in the world. Even if it seems like your chances are bleak, you still fight for justice. So those are the main parts of the story. Oh, there's one other thing that's kind of significant in that this is a very common story in Judaism and many other types of mythology. In many mythologies, the couple has trouble conceiving, and then God comes along and performs a miracle and allows the woman to conceive. You see that throughout many mythologies, and it comes up here too. Sarah is not capable of conceiving, so she gets Hagar to bear a child with Abraham that she will call her own. But Hagar becomes very indignant and doesn't treat Sarah well, and it's reciprocated. And so they have a son, Ishmael, who becomes the progenitor of the Arab peoples. And since we wrote the story, he comes out being the son of a concubine, whereas Isaac is the son of his wife, which is brought about through miraculous means when angels announce to Abram that a miracle will be performed, and his wife will conceive at 90, and he will be the father at 99. So this story is the genesis of the conflict between the Jews and the Arabs, and things have not been very good ever since. But again, what we should remember from the story is that according to the Torah, we both descend from the same father, we're part of the same family, and therefore we should reconcile. So those are the main highlights of the Torah reading this Friday and also next. And I invite anyone to share their thoughts on the Torah reading or current events or anything else. Go ahead, Emily.
I've always had trouble with the chosen people thing. I think it's kind of elitist and makes other people resent us. I think you have to earn people's respect. And the idea that a lot of Jews look at themselves as predisposed to be chosen doesn't make for winning friends and influencing people.
Couldn't agree with you more, Emily. And
okay.
Well, that's what I was saying. That the concept is it's divisive, and in fact, it's going to be the subject of tomorrow's discussion with me and with Fritz. Both of us feel the same way. If you look at it this way, you could say that the chosen people concept is like a disease of the human mind. All groups, or most groups, think that they're the perfect ones. They're the blessed ones. They're the chosen ones. All of their mythologies and all their stories talk about how they were chosen by the gods. So this is not just a Jewish concept, but you could say that this is a disease, this conceit of the human mind. But the disease has two variants in Judaism, that of Christianity and Islam. each one of them says, no, actually, we're now the chosen ones. You guys blew it. God's really mad at you. And so now his covenant is with us. We're chosen. But these variants have mutated. They're now more lethal and more contagious than anything the Jewish people came up with. More lethal because they now have the extra added version that if you don't agree with them, or if you're not part of their group, you're going to get sent to hell. So now God really hates you, not just loves their people, but hates you and is going to torture you to death. And also it involves an afterlife. So this makes it particularly lethal and contagious because it was spread by force of arms. So Christianity was spread by the Roman Empire throughout the world through force, and Islam was sent by the sword, spread all over the place by the sword. Both religions were spread not by convincing people that they were right, but by violence and conquest. And they're very violent and very intolerant. The whole concept needs to be discarded, and instead it should be replaced by choosing. We should be choosing to be godlike, choosing to be enlightened, choosing to try to bring about peace in the world. We should be choosing, not chosen. And then the concept can be restored so that's beneficial rather than harmful for humanity. Anybody else want to weigh in on this? Go ahead, Jack.
Go ahead, Jack.
I wanted to say that a couple of years ago, I forget where I was when I was doing a reading about the story of Ishmael and Hagar are in the desert, but they're told beforehand that you'll have food and water, but you will be taken care of. So the trip in the desert lasted a long time, and the water was gone, and the food was gone. Hagar sat down waiting for some miracle, some angels to come or somebody to give her food and water, and then realized that the responsibility of taking care of her own child is hers. Right. The responsibility of getting water and food was hers. And she looked and she found what she needed to survive. And I kind of said, that's great. I like that. Because I say, let's look at the world. The responsibility to make it a better place belongs to the people to do it. Because don't wait for an angel, because you'll be waiting forever.
Jack, that's a very, very important, wonderful lesson that you shared. She took matters into her own hand, and then eventually she returned. She went back she didn't accept being cast out. She came back and said, I'm not leaving. And Jews we shouldn't accept second-class status either. I'm glad you mentioned that. Abraham was not the perfect father. He might have been the father of the Jewish people, but one son he casts off into the wilderness to die. And then the other son, he holds a knife to his throat, ready to sacrifice him. So he probably would not have won Father of the Year, although he was qualified to be Father of the Jews. He was far more considerate to the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. God said he was going to destroy them, and he says, no, you can't do that. That wouldn't be right. But his own son is going to be killed, and he just goes along with the plan. So these are things that need to be questioned also, and I'm glad you raised that issue, Jack. I think it's an important part of the story. Harris? Does Harris have his hand up? I can't see. I don't know. Anybody else want to share some thoughts on this?
Unmute yourself, Harris, if you want to say something.
What I wanted to say wasn't too nice. So.
All right, everything goes here, Harris.
I don't really believe in all that stuff. It was the writers who wrote everything, and who knows if any of those people really was around. Like I say, Moses was Egyptian, and he was never listed in Egyptian history at all.
Yeah, well, sounds like you're bringing up heresy to me, Harris, but
okay.
Compared to the things I say, I don't see why you would be so worried about what you're sharing with us. I mean, that's pretty much what I've been saying all along. So the Torah, though, can very well be read not as historically accurate, but what through our ancestors who wrote the Torah, what does it reveal about those people? And you're correct, Harris, to question the literal truth of these stories. They clearly don't stand the test of logic and reason and historicity, including Moses. By the way, Moshe is a word that's used at the end of certain names of pharaohs. Moshe means actually the son of in Egyptian. So there's a lot of Egyptian pharaohs with Moshe in the name, including Ramses is like Ra and then Moses.
Yeah.
And that means the son of Ra was the sun god. So Moshe does show up in Egyptian history in the names of pharaohs. But as you say, Harris, there's no figure in Egyptian history that conquered them and destroyed them and the plagues. It's all mythological. But the Torah is very important for sharing with us what our ancestors thought about. And like I say, they envisioned that they were chosen to be a blessing. And in its pure form, this is a really beautiful thing. To think that through the Jewish people, all the peoples, all the nations of earth would be blessed. And that Abraham would be a figure who would argue for the stranger and for people who are oppressed, as he did in this story, even against the authority of God, is an incredibly important message. The message of Noah to stand up and not do what everybody else is doing, but do the right thing. The concept that we were created in a divine image and that each one of us is part of a family of humanity. Each one of us has a spark of divinity within us. These are beautiful lessons. And it's sad that some people discard them all because they say, well, I don't believe this story is just made up, so I'm not going to have anything to do with Judaism. They're tossing out the baby with the holy water, and they're overlooking some very, very important lessons. And that's why I believe we're all here, not because we think that God wrote the Torah and every word of it is true, but we recognize that the Jewish people have a mission, a purpose. And in this world today, where things seem very bleak, I know of no other people that could really help save humanity with our indomitable spirit the way we can. So it's all the more important that we read these stories, learn from the stories, and not take them literally, but understand the lessons that derive from them. So no, Harris, it's okay. You can say these things. Nobody's gonna be offended. So thank you for sharing that. That might be a good way to sum up, but maybe is there anyone else who would like to wrap up this session? I do have to, as I mentioned, I have to leave early. Or maybe Sharon, do you want to make any announcements? And if you do, I'll actually follow you with a couple of announcements of my own.
Yeah, I want to invite everybody to tomorrow night, special evening at 7 p.m. with Pastor Fritz Optenkamp and Rabbi Barry, who, as he said earlier, about who are God's chosen people, the Jews, the Christians, or the Muslims. And I want to just again say that Friday night service will be really wonderful. It's one of Barry's finest pieces. And it has Lech Lecha, the Torah Parsha, in it. We swapped. He did Vayera last Friday at the outdoor because there was a portion in it about the trees and it fit better with the environmental Shabbat. And he swapped the Lech Lecha for this week, which happens to be my son's Torah Parsha from his bar mitzvah. But it's a very meaningful Torah portion and a very meaningful sermon, inspirational message that Rabbi delivers. And the theme is Abraham, the father of the Jews, throughout the service. So I recommend highly to watch this pre-recorded one. And then on October 29th, we'll be meeting at 7 p.m. at the Fellowship Hall on the Methodist campus. And
thank you, Sharon. I appreciate your kind words. This passage, like I say, is very, very important. It really summarizes the calling, not of just of Abraham, but of the Jewish people and our role in the world and the vital mission that we have. So it is a very important passage. And I think Sharon found it particularly inspiring, one of my best, because I don't think I said anything about politics or didn't make fun of anybody. And it was pretty positive and upbeat. And it was relatively concise. And the whole service was along that theme, which I've been trying to do, is have the service around a central theme so they could watch it and get a message that's reinforced throughout. So yeah, I like that one too. And I also appreciate Sharon putting in a tremendous amount of work to coordinate it and orchestrate that. I am hoping that before too long, we will go back to mostly live services, maybe with a screen. But for now, these videos, they're next best thing. And I appreciate Sharon's involvement in making it happen. So yeah, if you can get other people to watch, that would be good, because it's going to be something that's quite compelling. And we also have the service that we did about BlackRock and the environment. That's also now on the air. So you can share that with other people. You can go to our website, and I believe it's on there, and you can share that with others. We're having a congregational meeting in November, very important meeting. We're going to chart out where we go from here. And we're in a state of flux. So if you have some thoughts or ideas, they could very well carry the day. So hope to see you then. And I do thank all of you for tuning in. This was a very good session, short and sweet, and I think we accomplished quite a bit. Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Sharon.